The MLB is horrified that this is happening right now, and namely, the New York Mets. They're pretty hot right now. They're atop the NL East, and their pitching has been top shelf and sheerly dominant. Max Kranick has been one of those guys, surprisingly, but we'll dive into the stats in just a little bit. Something to mention, how bad that offense has been. And it's funny because the offense has been bottom barrel. It's been one of the worst in the league, but their pitching has just been so good that it's made up for it, and they are currently atop the NL East and have a record of 8-4. Welcome back to Mets Digest, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host today, Mike Duda. I am new at the channel, and it is a pleasure to be here. Can't wait to just keep talking amazin's with all of you. But to do that, I need you to subscribe, and that's what I ask for today. Please subscribe to help out this channel, to help us at Digest Mets and Digest Media produce daily content for you about none other than the New York Mets. So, I'm a big stats guy, and you guys will see this as the videos continue to be produced. So we'll start off with stats, but right now, since this is a video about really how the Mets have done in their first 12 games, I want to start this off by breaking down the schedule so far. You see the first 5 games. 3 against Houston, 2 against Miami. 3 losses and only 2 wins. They started out 2-3 and were pretty cold to start the year. And in fact, that extra inning win on Wednesday the 2nd was critical because they were supposed to lose that game. If it wasn't for some late inning heroics by Pete Alonso, they would have lost that game and dropped to 2-4 in the first 6. And we might have seen something like we did last year where the Mets were just really, really bad in their first couple of games. But the Mets won that game, then they hit a 6-game win streak. So there is all of the final scores and the results. And here are the standings. The Mets are currently tied with the Philadelphia Phillies for the best record in the National League East at 8-4. They're currently 4th in all of the National League. Look at how dominant that NL West has been, by the way. That is absurd. But I mentioned I'm a big stats guy, so let's dive right into it. Instead of talking about how they've been so good, let's talk about why they're 8-4 and maybe not 10-2, 11-1, possibly even 12-0. It's this. It has been the offense. You see that they have 80 hits. That is tied for 2nd worst in all of professional baseball, and the rest of these stats do not help their case offensively. They currently have the 10th least runs in the bigs. They are tied for the 4th least home runs, and if it wasn't for Pete Alonso, who has been the best player on this team, they would be dead last in home runs. They are currently 8th worst in batting average, 9th worst in on-base percentage, and 10th worst in OPS in the bigs. So bottom 10 in almost all of the major categories so far for this offense. But when you go to the other side of things, let's look at the pitching. It has been incredible. Now, this is the cumulative stats for the pitching. You see a 2.10 ERA that is best in the bigs. Their starters also have an ERA that tops the MLB, and then the relievers are currently 2nd. So sheerly dominant statistics when it comes to the pitching side of things. We'll dive into that in a little bit. Right now, we need to go over this offense. You see there, Pete Alonso, and I highlighted this by WAR because even though I'm not the biggest analytical guy myself, I do believe that WAR is a pretty good stat because it's a good way to compare if you're above average and how much above average you are. A 0.0 WAR is average. That means you have no wins above replacement. Pete Alonso is nearing 1 already, and they're only 12 games into the season. And you see it right there. Alonso is leading the Mets in all major categories, and I mentioned those 3 home runs and how the Mets would be bottom of the league in home runs if it wasn't for this man. 15 RBIs so far. His OPS is nuts, nearly 1.2. And then you see Juan Soto right beneath at an 0.4 WAR. He has been good. He's good when you compare him to any other player in the MLB. But when you compare him to who Juan Soto is, honestly, I feel like he's a little cold. An average around 280, you like to see that around the 310, 320 mark when it comes to Juan Soto, especially comparing him to his statistics from last year. But you can't really complain with an OPS that's above 800. I think the slugging is really low, as you can see with some of these other stats, like the 1 home run that he has, and he only has 4 doubles, so only 5 extra base hits all year for a guy that's really an extra base hit machine. So low slugging, that's why the OPS is a little low, but Soto is still continuing to draw the walks that he needs to draw, and it's working because he's getting on base. Next up is Hayden Senger. Senger's done a really decent job right now. He has an 0.2 WAR, not necessarily because of his offense, more because of his defense. He's been throwing out runners a lot, and it's been working really well for him on the defensive side of things. But the offense hasn't been bad. The Mets need Hayden Senger. At least they needed him for the past couple of games. But it looks like Luis Torrens is going to finally take over against Oakland tonight, which is very important because Torrens, as you could see from the stats, has been great. An average sitting at the 300 mark, and OPS as well. That's very, very good, above the 800 mark, because OPS is above 800 are truly, truly great. They're really good. So Torrens has been really good offensively. He's also been great defensively. He's thrown out a bunch of runners, and he's looked good behind the plate. Of course, he's starting because Francisco Alvarez started off on the injured list to begin the season. So Torrens has done a really good job replacing him. And with Torrens banged up because he's been dealing with a forearm injury because he took a couple of curveballs to the forearm on nasty bounces in a couple of games, he is not playing. And Hayden Senger's done a really good job replacing him. It looks like Torrens should be back tonight. That's at least what the Mets are saying for their game against the A's. I think I said Oakland earlier. Sacramento, or currently just the A's. I don't know why they don't say Sacramento. But anyway, some of the other guys that I want to highlight. Francisco Lindor, not necessarily the best stats to begin the year because that average is a little low. Specifically, that OBP is a little low, and you won't see a high OPS from a guy that finished second in MVP voting last year and was arguably the MVP, maybe if Shohei didn't go 50-50 for the Dodgers. But he's been good lately. He started terribly in Houston. He was 0 for 11 in that opening series, but he's really found his zone ever since. So that's a positive to look at for Francisco Lindor. But outside of that, I mean, these stats are just really, really, really bad. Jose Siri has been a nightmare. So has Tyrone Taylor, who are both splitting time in center field right now. Of course, the Mets did not re-sign Harrison Bader. They went with a outfield that had the center field position with Siri and Taylor. They wanted more of the defensive guys because they figured that lineup is so lethal, and it really is. You have Lindor, then you have Soto, then you have Alonso, Nimmo, and Vientos. On paper, that is so lethal that you really don't necessarily have to worry about the bottom of the lineup, and you can get a guy who's more of a defensive player like Siri and like Taylor. But the problem is some of these names that I'm mentioning have not been good. Brandon Nimmo has been really bad. Mark Vientos has been just straight up putrid. And he hasn't had a day off, which I found interesting, but it's not really interesting because when you look at the production from the second baseman, Brett Beatty is now a second baseman. For those of you that didn't know, in the offseason, he transitioned to a second baseman because Vientos was so good in his rookie year. The second basemen have been so bad that Carlos Mendoza, the Mets manager, really doesn't want to start either of these guys at third base to give Vientos a day off. So as bad as Vientos has been, he hasn't been as bad as Brett Beatty and Luis Angel Acuna, who have been worse. You see the stats there. They're just absolutely putrid from Beatty and Acuna. I will probably go on rants about why Brett Beatty should not be on this team, so stay tuned for that. But Beatty's just been awful, and Acuna hasn't been much better. So that's why Vientos has been playing, but he hasn't been producing so well. And so all of this is going to accumulate to just really bad statistics overall from the team offensively. But they're 8-4 and they're leading the division. So let's stay on the positive end of things. We will go back right now to our statistics. You see the Mets overall pitching. They have a 2.10 ERA, which is amazing and is atop the bigs. And you see how much of a difference it is between the San Francisco Giants, who are in second. Easily the best ERA in baseball. They have the sixth most strikeouts in the bigs as well. But they have the sixth best batting average against, which is surprising considering they have the best ERA, and only the 11th best whip, which is walks and hits per innings pitched. So interesting there. And you'll see why when we get to the bullpen, but let's stay on the positive end and talk about this starting pitching. Best ERA in the bigs, third in walks, which is exactly why, I apologize. The starting pitching has been why that batting average against and that whip has been questionable, because they have the third most walks in the bigs. Yes, they have the fourth most Ks, but They are third in walks with the most amount of free passes they've given up. They are 23rd in whip, which means they are amongst the bottom of the league and easily amongst the bottom of the league in whip. It means they're giving up a lot of base runners, and that eventually will turn into runs, which is something that we need to be a little bit concerned about. They're also 13th in batting average against, which isn't good for a team that has the best ERA amongst starting pitching. That means that the Mets are getting themselves in bad situations. They're giving up base runners. That's not good because right now they're stranding them, but as you continue to go on with the season, and especially if the offense is not there, you're going to start giving up those runs if you're the starting pitching or if you're the bullpen. This bullpen has been amazing. You see there, the stats they speak for themselves. Yes, they're second in ERA because Edwin Diaz had a bad outing in that 5-0 shutout, but whatever. 26th in walks. That means they're bottom 5 in the league in free passes given up amongst relievers. 13th in Ks, doesn't really matter too much. 4th in whip and 4th in batting average against. They're not giving up base runners. They're stranding the base runners that the starting pitching gives them, and they have been incredible overall, this bullpen. However, the bullpen will eventually get tired. And that's going to be a problem because then that bullpen that's been so good is going to not be as productive. And that starting pitching that's been amazing might not be as productive. And then the pitching overall is not going to be as productive and it's not going to be good. And then if you pair that with the offense that has been really, really bad, you're not going to win ball games. So, moral of the story today, through the first 12 games, the Mets are 8-4. They're winning in the NL East right now. They're doing well. They're pretty much right where expectations set them. A .666 winning percentage is really, really good. That would be an over 90 win team, which is what you want. That's what you want in professional baseball, and that's what you want when you're a team that's supposed to make the World Series. However, their offense needs to wake up. Because if their offense doesn't wake up, it's going to continue to put more strain on the starting pitching, which will then create less innings from them and more strain on that bullpen, both of which have been incredible. So, offense, you got to wake up, and it all starts tonight in Sacramento. A little bit of a late night game because they're on the West Coast, but make sure to tune in. I'll actually be at Yankee Stadium before that, so go catch the enemies a little bit. And then on the train ride back, I will be watching none other than our New York Mets. Pete Alonso, of course, the player to watch. He's been red hot, but this offense needs to wake up. The pitching has been dominant. But hey, let's stay positive. Our Metsies are 8-4. Thank you very much for watching today's video. This is all the time that we have. As always, Mets are doing good. And let's go Mets. See you guys in the next video.